Hello and welcome to the Medical Sales Podcast, and I am your host, Samuel. In this podcast, I interview top medical sales reps and leading medical sales executives across the entire country. And it doesn't matter what medical sales industry, from medical device to pharmaceutical to genetic testing to diagnostic lab, you name it. You will learn how to either break into the industry, be a top 5% performer within your role in sales, or climb the corporate ladder. Welcome to the Medical Sales Podcast. Hello and welcome to the Medical Sales Podcast. I'm your host, Samuel, and today we have another special guest, and he goes by the name of Edouard Saget. What makes Edouard special? Well, besides the fact that he's a co-CEO of OrthoGrid, this is a company that's bringing a really novel and game-changing device to the medical sales industry. And besides the fact that he's a healthcare entrepreneur with over 20 years of experience developing and delivering market entry and growth initiative strategies for companies, this man was someone who did not know anything about medical sales and got to this country from France, got into the industry, applied himself, learned, started a company, and now he's at the top of the ladder. Why am I sharing it this way? Because this is the kind of story that I believe everyone should listen to. It's the kind of story that's going to inspire you to do that much more. Because of the odds he faced and what he was still able to do, it leaves anyone listening to really think to themselves, I have no excuse. Whatever I want in this life, I'm going to go get it. That's absolutely what Edouard. I'm not going to say any more. I'm not going to spoil the episode. But I really, really encourage you to listen carefully. He really explains things and shows you what's possible. So as always, we do our best to bring you guests that are doing things differently in the medical sales space. And I really do hope you enjoy this interview. Hey, Eduardo, how are we doing today?
Doing great, Samuel. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Why don't you tell the audience who you are and what you do?
My name is Edouard Saget. I'm the co-CEO of OrthoGrid. OrthoGrid is a leader in the transformation of orthopedic surgery with AI, new type of technology that we're able to bring into orthopedic procedures.
Let's get into that, because those are a lot of big words. And as you know, we have people in our audience that have no idea what you're talking about. What has it been like before this technology, before AI was able to assist? Why is it important? And what is adding AI to this now changing?
That's a fundamental question, actually. It goes all the way back to, for me, technology was a tool that just came when I started selling total joint replacements. And that technology was the regular navigation systems, the optical tracking, the brand labs, the OrthoSoft back then, or even Praxim was one of the companies that was making those systems, and the Medtronic Stealth Station. The technology was really cool in terms of being able to guide things, instruments, implants, range of motion.
Okay.
Just really cool technology. When you change technique, which is what happened in the total hip replacement world, technique change happened. And with that technique, that technology did not work as well. There was a change that happened where we brought fluoroscopy in. Fluoroscopy worked better, but didn't have any supportive technology. The world of AI kind of merged at the same time as this technology was taking over this procedure, total hip replacement. And we saw it as a tool to really get to the next level of performance, even at least at the same level of the technology that we were using in the past.
AI has blended, when those technologies were combined, they only work so well. AI has blended them in a better way to make it more effective and much more valuable.
Yeah, so the benefits of AI, in the same way, level of immediacy, everything's super efficient. I think today we're starting to understand that. 7 years ago, when we were playing around with it, it wasn't that obvious because it was first things came out, like machine learning was a word. I can save my life writing a line of code, right? That's not what I. But the problems is what we're trying to resolve. We started asking a bunch of questions and being curious about what these software options were, what we could do with software. But this machine learning stuff was just keep coming about in the meetings. And my partner loves to go on the forefront of everything. He's just a porn guy, and he's an engineer as well. He brings all the stuff, and he brought this concept of automating through software with AI. It's got very curious about, hold on, the system could operate on its own. Just really cool. Because when you are in the operating room, you're depending on either the surgeon is depending on a human, or something has to do the work on his behalf. The ability to have a system that could work autonomously, like without the help of another person in sync with a surgeon, was very interesting for us to explore. We did.
Absolutely. And, just to give you more context to this, walk us through a procedure and the results before this technology and the procedure and the results after this technology. What's the stark difference here?
Yeah, it depends on what market you're talking about because, there are different tools that work somewhat in the same space. They just provide different value points. You have a registration process, that's a step and a requirement. You have a procedure process. And then after that, there's a modality, and that modality can be different. In terms of what it looks like before, you take an X-ray, an image, right, in surgery, and then it would go to a machine, which those two things are still happening. That hasn't changed. Yeah. But then when it goes on a machine, everything has to be done by a human in the old ways. The image comes in and you have to press all these buttons everywhere to kind of do what you need to do. Sure. Now, the surgeon in the back there operating, it doesn't really want to wait for things. So there's a level of efficiency and performance. The other thing is when that human is different every time, you may have a different result. Human does it one way, the other human does it the other way. There's not reproducibility.
That margin of error exists with humans doing it.
Now we do differently is that, yes, the image is still produced by an X-ray machine. It is still transferred over to our system. The difference is that our algorithms were trained to do all what the human was doing. It means recognize the step of surgery, give an instructions, do a quality assurance check, provide the information, potentially give a warning, and all that just happening all at the same time. It goes up and it just, boom, it happens. It's kind of trying to do all the processing of the physician in their brain as how they would want to do it and just telling a digital robot, a software robot, to do it on their behalf. And it works.
Would you say that it's saving physicians time, money, all the above? What's the biggest impact that a physician gets excited by when they hear this technology?
I think the number one thing they're excited about, I think, is a system that works for them. Surgeons, they have perfected their surgical workflow. When you introduce change, either you're selling something or you're introducing a new solution, you might interfere with that flow. And that flow is important to them because from beginning to end, it's almost their factory, right? There's a product at the end, and that is maybe a total hip replacement, perfectly done the same way every time. That's what they sold to that patient. That's what they're committed to. Bring a new technology in and that disrupt that, it really needs to have a lot of value for them to be willing to go through that risk. The way we look at it is they're already doing a certain technique, and that technique uses the C-arm. The image is being produced anyway. What we wanted to do is like, okay, if the image is being produced, let's process it on your behalf with everything that you want, right? You don't have to wait for it, and it speaks to you. When I talk to a physician about the use of OrthoGrid, my first question is, what's your technique? And then I understand how the system is going to work, but I'm not asking them specifically to change their technique. And that's a very powerful conversation because that's a big worry. They can always default back to what they know how to do.
Now, would you say that it's AI, so AI is finding the most effective technique, or is it not quite that advanced yet?
The reality is you train your AI. You have to train it. And it's not just one algorithm that comes out and does everything. It's a bunch of algorithms, and then there's a bunch of different quality checks along the way. And then there's also an element of logic that needs to be organized so that you have a certain behavior, if that makes sense. What we tried to do with this specific product as a first generation AI was to statically, if you wish, achieve a level of performance that a physician could be confident with in its relationship. It's really workflow based, but it does not learn from the surgeon's experience. It has pre-learned everything and will not deviate from that, if that makes sense.
Now, well, I guess I'm asking, why not do that? Why not have it learn? And the more surgeries it sees, the more it captures, and the more it analyzes and says, hey, this is a better way.
I think it's a good question. We asked that question. It goes back to the question, how much data do you need and what kind of data you need? And that's a whole nother world, because the reality is there's a moment where you have a diminishing return. You already have enough data that you're going to achieve a certain level of performance. Having more of that data doesn't really help in much more than that. The risk actually is to lose that performance. Not all surgeons are perfect, and not every case is done perfectly. You could have a lot of different data points that would come in, and or acceptance rates that would potentially lower the performance of our own algorithms. So at some point, you have to say this is good enough, as good as it's going to be for as many people as possible. Then if you have some outliers, you need to go and grab those data points and say, okay, there's enough outliers here that we do need to train better, or we change the way we organize our software.
Excuse the naivete that I'm about to ask right now, but is there a space in which you could find the best surgeries? Could you get access to data that could say, these are the best surgeries that have happened for this criteria, for example, and then you now can see which techniques were utilized, plug it all into the device, the AI, and see what it comes out with? Or are we, again, too far away from stuff like that?
No, you're not. As a matter of fact, I think the problem is that you need both. The system needs to be able to see both. To know that it's good, you also know what bad looks like.
I see.
You can't just train on just good and good only. And it depends what we're talking about specifically, but real life is real life. And if you're going to try to do an artificial intelligence, it has to have some of the same elements, if that makes sense. That's one piece. Now, what's interesting is if you do have an excellence in model, you could pair it with what is the actual, happening present time.
Sure.
Then you could create a variability metrics that say, hey, you want to be the best, you need to be here, and you only here. That's assuming that you know what's perfect, and all surgeons will. It's never, you see what I'm saying? Surgeons are not always perfect.
It's you that knows who's perfect because you were the rep. You know which surgeons did it better than other surgeons when it came to the procedure.
There's no question about that. And I think you recognize it very well. And I think it's one of the most amazing things to watch, actually. Of course, we have surgeon pool that tells this is how the system needs to behave to be excellent. You do that as a group, not just a single guy.
Wow, that is exciting stuff you guys are playing with here. You're on the forefront of all of this. I remember when I first started, and I'm going to age myself here, 20 years ago, there was a physician that told me, hey, I really think you should think again as far as medicine. You should not be in it and don't let your friends enter it because pretty soon we're all going to be replaced by robots. I know he had some truth in it and he was joking back then, but what's the reality of that? Can we imagine a time where we won't even need the surgeons and really AI and technology is handling all of it?
Not in the near future, that's for sure. I think surgeons are not just operators and surgeons, right? There's a lot of decisions they make every day that is so multifactorial, impactful, and legally carry weight that we're far down the road before they're being replaced. And honestly, as a patient, potentially myself, I think that's a good thing. But technology assisting them, right, in a way that they are able to do more things with more accuracy and with less fatigue on them. There's a lot on those guys' shoulders these days across the entire world. So no, I would say it would probably be a good symbiosis between physicians, humans, and medicine. Otherwise, we're going to have a catastrophe anyway. Right. And if that's the case, everything's going to be reshuffled so that there's new rules of engagement between machines, software, humans. That's how that balance going to work out, probably.
Right. Now that makes sense. That's not often talked about, or is it? How has the quality of life improved for surgeons that are getting assisted by these technologies?
Yeah. So I think there's different curves, and I think surgeons would disagree and agree. Any new onset of technology incorporation, it comes with a lot of pain. There's been 20 years of that happening with all these EMRs. I bet if I take any surgeons and we ask them and they were going through those days of transforming their practice from paper to digital systems, I can tell you they were hating life.
Right.
So it's not always a good thing when you start with the first wave of technology. What's interesting about AI, though, it builds upon potentially things are already in place because it's a secondary effect of having all these data points that came in for these last 20 years. I think that's looking at rendering the systems more efficient at a level that the original expectation was, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, that does make sense. When you talk to a physician that's saying, hey, I want to know what you're doing, I want to understand this new device by OrthoGrid, why should I be excited about it? I'm assuming you've talked to hundreds of physicians by now. What feature do they get most excited by? Where they say, wait a minute, it can do what? Oh, yes, we need this.
Sometimes it's hard to tell, right? But depending on the physician and their qualifying, I think your customer matters a lot. You need to not waste your time with people where your product is not even going to be a need at all. That qualification, you need to do that first. Everything after that is just a little bit easier. But the number one thing I would say that physicians get super excited about is they used to do it one way, and it was a series of compromise on how they got to the end result. But with our system with AI, they get there immediately and they're like, wow, okay, that's what I wanted right now. Thank you. That just a little emotional shift is really what I could qualify as being the thing that make them kind of tick. Now, could they do it without it? Sure, they've been doing it before. But why not do it? It's kind of like I have the cameras in my car. It helps me know exactly how far I am from the truck behind me, right? I could do it in park. I'm French. I've learned how to park really well on my own. But the camera is nice. It's a ease of use, first of all, and it's the reproducibility. That's what's meaningful to them. And the last thing is the consistency, so that when they do a surgery on a patient and they finish it one way, they expect to see a certain result in their clinic when they see that patient again, face to face. They want to know that they can do that over and over and over again. They're trying to get that consistency out.
This is fantastic what you've done, what you've created. And I think one thing that everybody listening has to hear is how you got to this space today. Again, you're CEO of OrthoGrid. This is a cutting edge company that's doing cutting edge things, and a lot of money is involved, and it's exciting. But I need to hear your story. So let's go back to where you even started, when you got into this country. And I don't want to spoil it for anybody. I'm going to let you tell it. But Edouard, take us back to the beginning. How did you get to this country? Give us the story.
The reality, the story of OrthoGrid, though I'm here, I guess, on your podcast speaking, it's a story of a lot of people. And the backgrounds in OrthoGrid are so interesting, stemming from like my partner is South African. I'm co-CEO with him, and he's South African. He has a whole story that's unbelievable. And then I have another partner who is from Kodiak, Alaska, who is a master fisherman, has a big boat, and is an orthopedic surgeon and used to climb a very high level cliffs. And very interesting background of that team. And then from there, how did we meet? I guess is the question. All right. I'm from France originally. I moved a lot of different places. I grew up in France with my family, a sister and a brother, and 3 half brothers from the US. This is the connection with the US right there. My mom had a first marriage. How did the French guy get to the US?
Right.
That plays a big role because I was able to get the kind of visas that allows us to do that. And then I moved a lot, but I ended up going to med school. I went to, with my best friend's dad, we skipped church on Sunday, and I would go in surgery, and he exposed me to surgery, the world of surgery, which I got fascinated just in high school. I ended up going to med school in France for a few years. I screwed up on my anatomy exam because I didn't show up on time. So I was like, I can't get in there anymore. So I moved to the US. I was like, okay, I want to go to the US anyway. I spent all my summers trying to figure out how to get here growing up.
How old were you?
When I first came, and it was in, I think, 15 years old, but on the summers. But then we moved in 1999. So I was 20 years old and my sister was 19. And we moved to Boise, Idaho, of all places. Little town at the time, still a little town, but in the Western US, that was really where we wanted to be. It's kind of like the dream of the Western US, cowboys, big rivers, beautiful landscapes.
Wow.
And skiing, that was a thing. We did that, my sister and I. And then as I was going to Boise State University, the Blue Turf, I also ended up trying to go back inside the operating room. And the best way to do that I found out, was to be a medical sales rep. Long and behold, you don't need all these fancy degrees to get into the OR. And
How did you find out, though? How did you find out about this job?
That's a very good question. I think it's an important question, as a matter of fact, because I think it's everything about how you enter your medical sales industry at times. Sure. It's about who you know. And that was totally random. My brother, if you wish, was an orthopedic surgeon, hand surgeon. And one of his sales rep was for Smith & Nephew, was a snowboarder. Okay. And I love to snowboard. And I was looking for people to go snowboard with. So he put me in touch with them, and we went together. And what happened is that in his car, as every good medical sales rep orthopedics, your car is really not your own. There's stuff everywhere in it. It's like books of technique guides and instrumentation trays running around. Cling, cling, cling. And I got my hands on a technique guide of a Russell Taylor nail at the time from Richards Orthopedics. And I just devoured it on my way to the snowboard hill. Okay. And I could shut up about it on the lifts. And then I just really got like interested. And then he hurt his back one day and he needed help. And he called me, he's like, it seems like you're kind of passionate about this stuff and I need help. I'm bedridden now. I got the surgeries. Can you help me out? And it was, I think in May or June, 5 months after I moved in the US. That's when I was like, yeah, hell yeah, let's go. And I had to learn and I covered hip surgeries. I'm super thankful for the team and a small town in Idaho to welcome me in with my French accent and learning how to do this thing.
So
And
wait a minute. You didn't have anything to do with them. You helped him out, and then he gave you a job, or he told his team and then they gave you a job?
he was by himself, so he gave me a job.
Wow, that's unbelievable.
And so I helped him out for that summer. And then I was in the OR. So first of all, I wanted to get back in the OR. I was doing orthopedics, which I knew a little bit about, but not a lot. And then suddenly, yeah, I kind of really had a lot of fun with the staff as well. And I'm a sponge for this stuff, so I learned really fast with OR stuff. It was really fun. And I kept doing it and helping him. And then he gave me little lines. And I kind of practiced that. I say, hey, you know what, this thing, why don't you go out and sell it? See what happens. It was an ENT line called OrthoCare at the time, and it was for turbinates on the nose. And yeah, that was really an interesting piece because I had to learn everything and I had to go and get the appointments with the physicians and get my little sales rendezvous and sales pitch on. And it worked. I sold some stuff. I got my first commission, was $2,000. So excited.
Now, wait. How old are you at this stage?
21, just turned 20. The job with him was 20, and I'm a summer baby. So I turned 21 in September. My first sale on my own without any help from anyone was, I think, in October.
I actually have one more question. So, two, you said he hurt his back.
Yeah.
Was it from snowboarding?
It wasn't. It was, good question. It was from dirt biking.
He was just his own version of an athlete. And then,
it definitely was. It was a surfer.
okay. And then you helped him. You guys become friends. He takes you on, gives you your first experience. You get your own sales. You're doing your own thing now. And then take us to the next position. What happened after that?
After that, so he actually left. He went to Hawaii and decided to leave. So what was left was all these surgeons and product kind of in limbo and technically almost in my hand, right? I was managing them with him. But the boss, the distributors or the folks did not really know who I was. So they had to make a decision when they hear that he was leaving. They entrusted those lines to me. So I'm very thankful to a few people who have trusted in letting me manage these product lines. That's Smith & Nephew Trauma, Smith & Nephew Recon, OrthoCare, and there was also the clinical therapy side of Smith & Nephew, were fantastic product lines, actually.
So you've always been a 1099 sales professional.
Always. Now we're in the world where everybody wants a base salary.
It's the only way now.
Man, I do recruit salespeople, and the first thing they want is base salary. And you know what? My first thing I would want is commission. I mean, it's a fascinating transition. But yeah, no, look, there's two worlds, right, in this field. The 1099 world, and there is the employee world. And I've learned to see that there are benefits to both from the employer side, but also from the employee 1099 contractor side. I think the experience is somewhat the same when it comes down to talking to the physician, being part of a team, and bringing change inside the environment you're looking to change, and picking your products too. You should pick your products. I think it's the number one thing you should pay attention to.
Okay, so you hear that, folks. Pick your products. We talked to hundreds of people that want to get into the industry, and everybody still has this mindset, I just got to get in. And we say, look, stop thinking that way. Start getting interested in where you want to be within this space. Learn what's actually being sold. And like you just said, why don't you pick a product or pick a disease state that you're actually interested in that you could sell under? That, I couldn't agree with you more.
I mean, I got to tell you, somebody wants to call me right now and say, hey, I don't know anything, but if I work my butt off and I don't cost you anything, you pay me commission, and where can I sell? I can tell you, we'll give you shots. There's very little to lose at doing that. And it's all to gain for that person. I'm not saying it will work every time. And there's organizations that don't work like that. But if you're a distributor and you're always looking for some help, that's how most of the help comes in. It's word of mouth. I need a helper rep. There's plenty of these entries positions, but there's a lot to say about hard work and just saying, I want something.
So let me ask you this. You own OrthoGrid and you hire. Who do you like to experience more? And I know it depends on the candidate, but would you say you're looking more for that rep that it was a 1099 and they bet on themselves? Or would you say you're looking more for that highly trained W-2 employee that performs really well? Who do you tend to lean towards more?
Yeah, I think, as we're building the organization, it has to be more kind of organized. There are definitely different level of roles with different level of expertise that we need to fill in. We're looking for trying to manage growth. First of all, the growth is going real fast. That's a process in on itself. So can I manage the inbound? And then can I deploy the sales force as well? So that's one role. But in terms of pure sales, I think you'd be surprised the kind of people that we brought in at times. It could be somebody that reached out to me on LinkedIn as an experience in the EMR world, selling directly to surgical practices, or it can be somebody who is pure 1099 with a current product line, first of all. And it depends where they sell, right? If you have a need for a certain market, you might consider that somebody would be an employee. That makes more sense there just because there's already a demand and potentially it's important to be controlling to some extent what the customer service looks like. You need a little bit of everything is what I realized in an organization like the one we're building that distributes product and software. The point is we have multiple options. So if there is an interest in joining a company like OrthoGrid, and there are plenty of other companies like that, to not think that there's only one way to serve a business. There's many ways to serve a business. And if there is a match and you can find that, I think we're always opportunistic or trying to be to get the help we need because we're always out of resource. That's just what it is.
Better. I love that there's always a way to serve a business. I love that. And you just need to find where you match. I don't think enough people think that way. And I'm so glad you shared that just now. Now, what I want to know is when you look at your profile on LinkedIn, you see you're CEO of ES Medical Sales, you're co-founder of Global Med Choices Management, and then, of course, OrthoGrid. And I'm assuming that since you've always been at 1099, you've been able to enterprise yourself in different ways. Talk to us a little bit about those two other companies that you have.
Yeah, the Global Med Choices one is interesting. I did that between the Pew and then the OrthoGrid, technically. And what we did is that we were helping to get patients from Canada who were on a waiting list. It was like 3 years to wait for a total knee or total hip. So really painful to wait that long. And Canada doesn't allow you to actually cut the line. So if a surgeon has a waiting list, you're at the end of the waiting list. That's just how it is. We ended up going to the Caribbean actually and set up first in the Caribbean surgical tourism business. So we would take patients from Canada, send them to the Caribbean with their surgeons, get a nice dinner on the beach, get operated on, recover on the beach. It was in Turks and Caicos actually at the time. And then, it was very cool because it allowed me to put together everything I had done in my medical sales career into boom, this is it. From the marketing using video, just like this, website building that I did for physicians, education to patient remotely. We were doing videos like this to teach patient remotely. At the time, we were trying to figure out how to capture patients with marketing and markets. Very interesting. All the way to the surgical procedure, the recovery, and all the way to 2 or 3 years later, which is the patient record and outcome tracking.
Yeah.
So everything, the negotiation with the hospital, the shipping across boundaries and frontiers and FDA, non-FDA, very, very interesting business.
There's no better feeling than finding a home for all of your skill sets.
It was fantastic. And it was challenging, very challenging, but it was fantastic. And patients were very happy. Yeah, so that was a very good time. Things shift in the Caribbean. It's kind of unstable sometimes.
Sure. There was depend on that market.
Not really. There's a little bit of corruptions, and I shouldn't say that actually. I wouldn't say corruption, but we got kicked out. We helped the patients because what we did is that we were taking the physicians and the patients from the Canada or the US, but then we were also doing those local patients that used to be flown out. And suddenly they didn't have to be flown out. They could stay with their family and stay at home and get the care from the same level of quality of physicians that the others were getting. And I think that was the most important part of that business is that we were helping those people. We would cross them in the grocery store and beach. Just it allowed me to get everything I had done and observed and participated into one thing. Then there's the OrthoGrid business, which really it's all I do right now. Wait,
you can't skip that, Edouard. We got to see how it happened here. You did this business. Caribbean's got a little difficult to navigate in, and then walk us through the process. Like, how did OrthoGrid spawn? What happened?
Yeah, no, that's a good question. When OrthoGrid happened as necessity to take care of physicians change into a surgical procedure. So in 2006, or even a little bit earlier than that. Joel Matta is a surgeon, orthopedic surgeon, very well-known surgeon, pelvic surgeon, trauma surgeon. He's a super nice guy, but he's also an explorer. That guy likes to go and learn new stuff and think about stuff. He went to France, which is kind of funny, to learn how to do a certain approach called the anterior approach in total hips. And that approach, he decided, was so transformative in terms of rehabilitation that he wanted to bring back in the US. And so he did his own cases, saw the changes, and started to go and talk to companies, say, hey, I think there's something there, published on it. And he had J&J, which those guys did a really good job at rallying behind Dr. Matta and creating this training program to learn this new technique that was foreign to the US market. And one thing that was different is the patient, instead of being on the side, was put on its butt, called supine. And then it helps the X-ray machine to come in and take images, it picture what's going on. And then also the approach and the incision is very much muscle sparing. It's very good for the patient in terms of recovery. And long story short, I told you earlier, we're using a type of technology for when the patient was in a certain position. Mm-hmm. And so this is the link where when we put the patient in a different position, the systems didn't work as well. Still don't today, to be honest with you. When we looked at that image that was being taken, that's why we're like, well, we need to do more with that. And that's where OrthoGrid's idea came, to be honest. We wanted to do an analog device, and that analog device, we did it with somebody in a garage, literally.
That's awesome. The best stories start there.
I remember this one rep of mine, because he came in one day with a wood board and chicken wire stapled on it. He's like, can we use this? You can't do that. That didn't work. But that was an interesting, first era of building it to try to get some data out of what we were doing, just simply trying to make it better. And there's a lot of do-it-yourself kind of at the beginning, that's for sure. But one thing we did is that we placed a patent on it right away. And then also we kept perfecting the device. I don't know why. We just didn't want to give up on it. We just kept going at it.
Yeah.
Make it better and better and better. And then we sent it to the University of Utah here in Salt Lake. And I got a call a year and a half later or something like that. Hey, Ray, that thing you sent over, it works. We're getting it published in the Journal of Arthroplasty in a couple months. And I was like, whoa.
Whoa. Hold on.
What happened?
You're minding your own business and you get a call, you said a year and a half later?
Yeah, because I sent the little device over to Eric Kubiak, who I just mentioned earlier, was from Canada, who is from Alaska in Kodiak. He was a professor at University of Utah. And Richard, who was in Salt Lake City, my partner, took that plate and gave it to him as something to use. And
I guess, were you guys anticipating the call? Were you guys thinking, okay,
I need to backtrack a little bit because that was my experience. Right. But Richard, who was my partner here in Salt Lake, was meeting with Eric, the guy from the University of Utah. And they're napkinning it and we're building that thing. So there's definitely a connection already, right? What we don't know is that when you start to study and they do the study, you don't know what the results are going to be. When it calls you, say, hey, the results are happening, it's much better than I even expected. But the reality for me is I had put that study, I totally forgot about it. It's like this thing that I forgot about. So when he called, said it was being published in a JOA out of all articles or publications.
You knew you hit it.
I didn't know I hit it because that was surprise to see the quality of, and again, it was rough. I mean, 10 millimeters was the norm back then. So sometimes my competition actually will take that article and say, well, it's only accurate plus or minus 10 millimeters. Yeah, that was the goal back then, but it's just the fact that it was at the same level as the other systems that were costing so much more was enough to say there's something here. There's a system of value, if you wish, less expensive, same results. And so that kind of stuck with me. And then we had the patents and we were waiting for the patent. The patent came out in December of 2013 and it was a fully issued. Our system was so kind of basic that without a patent, this would have never seen the day of life.
Sure.
Too much risk and nobody would have supported us. It's just, everybody can copy it. So it was interesting to have the combination of clinical data and patents. If it had been the other way around, patents but no clinical data, I'm not really sure we would have done anything about it. But because there was a clinical results first and a patent for protection, on 2014, we decided to go forward with the business as something that
just sounds like opportunity met preparation. Let me ask you this. Fast forward to when you said to yourself, "Oh my gosh, this is it. We're going now."
That is still happening.
He's like, "This morning."
This is something that evolves definitely. No, honestly, the it's an iteration process because constantly looking at different things and you never think you did it. I mean, I just launched AI right now and all I can think about is the next product because it's not perfect. Do you see what I'm saying? And the next generation of the AI and the performance of trying to answer what if and why not is how could we? And because there's always something else, man. And it's not like chasing, at some point you have to stop and say, are you splitting hairs? But the reality is, if there are still surgeons out there that need something fixed in an area that I participate in, then we're going to try to find a way to fix it. That's kind of where the whole mentality comes from, to be honest with you.
I love it. This is fantastic. You have OrthoGrid. You're on the cutting edge. A couple questions. How do you make it all work? Are you a family man? Do you just have all the time in the world? How do you balance a 1099 with whatever your social life looks like?
Well, yeah, I mean, that's been a difficult question since I got into medical sales. Be prepared for a balancing act.
Give us the family makeup first, and then tell us how you make it work.
So, family makeup, I am a happily married man to a beautiful woman by the name of Miriam. And she is the mother of two children, Jade, who is 20, and Lucas, who is 16. That's the family composition.
You're on the way out. I mean, gosh, 16, few more years, college. It's OrthoGrid and the wife and whatever else you guys want to do.
I kind of jumped that gun a little bit because I sent him to boarding school this year.
Okay. So he's already out. He's like, I've been living in that.
Yeah, I sent him to France. He actually asked for it. He wanted to learn French.
Oh, that'd be cool. Yeah.
So I found a boarding school for him to go to about 30 minutes from my parents. So,
wow.
I just came back actually, which is kind of fun to have him back. But technically my daughter was 20, was still at the house this year. Okay. So I'm not empty nester, but OrthoGrid is the big baby. It's definitely the big baby.
Yeah. And you're right. I forgot. Millennials and Generation Z, they stay till 30 now. It's no longer leaving.
Not going to happen. That's not happening at my house. We're not staying around at my house.
I get it completely.
So welcome back anytime. But
so then that's the family makeup, and I think what will give us some insight into how you balance it all is why don't you give us your what's the daily practice for you? What time are you getting up? What are you doing first? How do you make it all work?
Yeah, I wish it was perfect, man. It really isn't. And if it's on the road, so I do try to sleep 7 hours every day. I don't like that being cut short very much. So like East Coast travel, it's not my least favorite because I get in late. Potentially, I have to get up early if it's surgery. If there's any delays in airplane, you show up at 2:00 in the morning and you got to get up at 5 equivalent Eastern time, and that's 3:00 Mountain time.
Yep.
The sleep part here is very important. I love the 7 hours. My wife always wakes up way before me. But usually in terms of daily activities, with the morning routine, if you wish, I fast a lot. So I do a lot of fasting. I usually try to eat after 12 or 1:00 these days. And I work out 3 times a week. That's it.
Nice.
Not that much. Good. But I do love going in the mountains. That's the place where I get to relax. And
how often?
I don't do it enough, but usually when the winter is really good, it's at least twice a week, if not 3 times a week, if I can. But we'll do that if I'm not traveling.
That's awesome. That's fantastic. Okay, so then what drives you? You went to med school. You left your home nation. You made it in America. You've been a 1099 rep the whole time to the point where now you run an entire company, an organization. What is driving you? What drives all of this? Is it something religious? Is it something a life philosophy you have? Is it just the way it's always been? What can you say in that regard?
I think it's just the commitment. You set yourself onto a path, and that commitment to try to finish it and to get to the places that you envision is probably what drives you. Like I mentioned earlier, the what if or the why not and how could we, almost like a pool, right? That's probably a driving force. Now, after that, building a business, that's a whole nother interest. because it's complex. It's not easy. I didn't go to school for this stuff. So maybe there are some things that I'm missing in the process, right? And I certainly look back and could see things we could have done differently. But I think that's true from every CEO and entrepreneurs that I meet, to be honest with you. As a matter of fact, I just had a call with one today, and it's the one-on-one kind of, hey, man, how do we go about this? I'm like, yeah, no, it's one of those things you have to discuss or take internally a lot. But that part is really fun. I really enjoy that. I like the challenge of it. It definitely has made me grown personality. And those are the driving forces for sure. The money, honestly, right now, we try to take people in. So it's not something that actually produce a ton of money. I think, we're looking at something down the road when we finally get to the place we can get the rewards. But that's definitely delayed gratification. There's absolutely no question about it. As a sales rep, I find that the gratification is way more immediate because you get the sale, you get the commission, repeat. Right. And nothing stops you from trying to get more of it. When you get into the other side, the gratification comes from other places for sure. And I think after a while, you do see where the rewards can come.
I love it. If there's anything you can say to our audience, remember, our audience are people that want to get into the industry, people in the industry, and people leading the way. What one thing that you'd like to share?
If you're a sales guy, and if you want to be a sales guy, then sell yourself. I mean, that's the first thing, right? You got to go out there and you can't take no for an answer. And you got to sell yourself, and you will probably not stop selling yourself for a while. I think sales is a personal connection, is how you come across as well, not just the product, but also you are also part of the product. You're attached to that product. At the beginning, the product is you to an organization. That's what you got to think about. And don't let people tell you can't do something. If that's what you want to do, you have it in you to go get it. Then that's number one. The pathways, I mean, honestly, if I was to do it again, first thing I would do is I'd go find a doctor, any of them, depending on what the fields are, and then ask for recommendations of who they work with, our current sales reps. But just one phone call away from someone, right? How quickly can you get into that spot? And then that's one way to do it. The other thing is, as an organization, getting some training, like that's something that matters because depending on what you're trying to do, the best way to be valuable to an organization and serve an organization is if you can shortcut a little bit the process. I think you do some of that, but there's other things, organizations. If you can be either you can shadow someone, or you can work with an organization getting you up to speed about what the industry is about and how you can be effective.
Exactly what we do.
That's very valuable as well. I would say be persistent and be clear about the intentions. And usually I think things open door naturally.
I love it. Thank you for that, Edouard. Well, Edouard, this has been an amazing time with you, learning and being inspired by how to move mountains in the medical sales space. We have one more thing to do, and it's called the lightning round. Are you ready?
Yeah, I suppose.
All right. First question.
Yeah, Samuel, let me up.
Let's do it. First question. What is the best book you've read in the last 6 months?
Oh, actually, I don't read books that often. I do a lot of reading on the phone of all kinds of different things. I'm going to say about a book. I'm probably going to talk about an article.
Okay.
But the best article I've read was actually the one about a clinical data that's coming out on our product that compares humans.
Can't be mad at that.
I can't be mad at that.
That compares what? Say it one more time, the last part. That compares what?
That compares human versus AI. It's a wonderful piece, I think, and I think it's one of its first. And I'm very grateful for Dr. Glenick to put that together, 200 patients.
It's a published article?
I think it's going to get published pretty soon. It was a poster at one of the meetings. You asked me what I read, and that's what I read when I got the email. So,
okay. Well, I'm asking because let us know so that we can put it in the show notes.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you. I appreciate that.
Let's get people some access to it. All right. Next question. What is the best TV show or movie you've seen in the last 6 months?
Oh, TV show. I got sucked up this summer into one. What's the name of it? Outlander, I think.
I've never seen it, but I've heard people are talking about it.
And then the other one I saw that I got sucked into as well, but it's nice because it's not too many episodes, is the one on Bass Reeves. I like cowboy movies. I like this kind of stuff. So, yeah, it was fun.
I'm sorry. I don't know who Bass Reeves is.
So it's like the story of the Lone Ranger, I think. It's the same guys that did like Yellowstone, I believe.
Okay, I did see Yellowstone. I like that one.
So they have that very curated Western feel to it. Yeah, I got sucked into that.
Very cool. All right. And then meal. What is the best meal you've had in the last 6 months, and we want the restaurant and, of course, the item.
Yeah, actually, that's easy. It was yesterday. I had a beautiful meal at a restaurant in Salt Lake City called Rotopia. So if you're in Salt
Rotopia.
Lake City, you wanted a restaurant that is super healthy but really good, a menu for everybody. Yeah, Rotopia is delicious. And it's right at Mouth the Canyon on the way to Park City.
Okay. That will be in the show notes, folks. Any items to recommend?
Anything.
And okay, there it is. Okay, anything. And the last question, but not least, what's the best experience you've had in the last 6 months?
I had many, actually. Being with my family this summer and getting my son off to boarding school was very cool. The second thing is my daughter's graduation of her certificate for a master esthetician was really fun. Personally, I went and we did some cliff jumping in Moab. That was really fun. And I just finished my first ever heli ski trip in Canada. It was discounted. I went discounted. It was early December and I got hooked. That thing was really, really fun. Those are the last things we did. So I try to keep it balanced. Don't forget.
Yeah, sounds like it. I love it. Where can people find you?
At the office, most likely, or on a plane.
Or on LinkedIn.
Or on LinkedIn.
And his information will be in the show notes. Edouard, it was awesome having you on the show today. Keep doing the amazing things you're doing out there in the MedSales world. And we can't wait for an update.
Well, thanks, Samuel. You keep it really pumped up. It's really fun. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you. And that was Edouard Saget. Such an inspiring story. Listening to things like that really makes you say, wow, I'm going to do that much more. If you've been listening to this podcast for any period of time, then you already know what I'm going to say. Visit evolveyoursuccess.com, fill out an application, and get on the line with someone that can change your life. Evolve Your Success was created to create opportunity. And really, it was created to inspire people to reach higher. People ask me sometimes, what was my motivation to start this podcast? And initially, it was simply because I just felt that this industry is so amazing and it creates so many opportunities. And there should be more voices that champion what happens within it. And that's truly, that's what it served. Then it became, I want to make sure that I showcase every single field in medical sales there is so people can learn where they can be. And I'm still doing that. But as we grow with this podcast, we're approaching, I think we're about to cross 200 episodes. And I'm happy to say that we are crossing 200,000 downloads. And a lot of people have listened and learned. And now it's gotten to a point where it's a little bit less of something I want to do or something I should do. It's a little bit more of something I have to do. There's responsibility that has been created within me to really bring the message to the masses. And that's the goal, right? Bringing these inspiring stories to the masses. Let people see what's truly possible. So when it comes to whatever moves they want to make in their own lives, they have these kinds of stories to fall back on and say, you know what, I can do this. Whatever it is, I can do this. I want to say this. If you're here listening to this, maybe you want to get into the industry. Maybe you're already in the industry and you want to learn some sales skills, or maybe you found us because you just like podcasts and you're tied to medicine in some way. And you said, you know what, let me listen. However you found us, I want to share this with you. Right now, you have things you want to do. Right now, you're in a stage of your life where you're trying to progress. I want to share with you that right now, this very moment, I want you to picture this thing that you're trying to capture. I want you to imagine that you've captured it. Hold on to that. There it is. Now I want you to take the next step. Of course, I can't know who you are and I can't know what you've chosen, but I know that it's there and I know that there's a next step to take. Some of you might listen to this and think, you know, that's a really scary step, Sammy. I don't think I can do that. Some of you might listen to this and say, Sammy, that's the problem. I don't know what step to take. I'm going to challenge you. If you don't know what step to take, then you know what you need to do. If you know what step to take, then you know what you need to do. And if it comes to getting into the medical sales industry, then you also know what you need to do. I'm going to leave it there. As always, we do our best to bring you guests that are doing things differently in the medical sales space. And I really do hope you tune in next week for another episode of the Medical Sales Podcast. I hope you enjoyed today's episode. And remember, I have a couple programs that show you exactly how to break into the medical sales industry, become a top-performing medical sales professional, and also how to masterfully navigate your career to executive-level leadership. Check out these programs and learn more at evolveyoursuccess.com. Stay tuned for more awesome content with amazing interviews.